so deeply honored and grateful that you're joining me for a fresh approach to painting, Gateway to the Inner Artist. A fresh approach to painting, vertical expressions. Today we're going to work with a painting called Exploding Blue Haze on Butterfly's Wings. The name is exciting enough, but right now what we need to do is start out with a orange canvas. Not always do we paint a background on a canvas, but in this case we're going to show you how to do that. You're going to use a graduate acrylic paint that is used as a base coat. Now, not all base paints are made equally. I tend to like to use this particular one because the pigment is strong and that orange is vibrant. Remember, when we talked about paint colors, we determined that we're going to use the heavy body Liquitex paints because it is a professional grade paint. For the base coat, we're going to use this type of paint mainly to save money. If you want to use your heavy body orange, you can accomplish the same thing. The only thing you want to do is make sure you water it down enough so that it gives you a nice thin even coat. So we'll go ahead and finish this orange on top of a plain white canvas by using our foam brush, making sure that it's wet. And you see, we're not making any attempt to give any shapes. We're just working on coating that canvas and covering all the white. It's important to let your orange completely dry. This orange is your background color, because remember, if you paint a layer over the orange and it's still wet, it's going to bleed through to your top colors and make them muddy. So give your canvas enough time to dry thoroughly. Our goal is to focus on the vertical lines, since this is vertical expressions. And so we're going to start by placing color light to dark from left to right. We're going to start out with some white and use a wide enough brush that you can get a nice wide stroke. So we're going to go with the white. Then we're going to do a complete line of this. Then we're going to add a little bit of yellow, just side by side. I need a little more water on my brush. If you start having that experience of just feeling that rubbing feeling on your canvas, you shouldn't have that. You should be able to put your paint right on your canvas and it should be smooth when it's applied. All right, and now I'm going to go back to my white and I'm going to finish that white. Okay. Continue down. Now white, then our next color is going to go into the blue. I'm going to pick up the blue. This is the Brilliant Blue, and I'm going to put it next to my yellow. Keeping attention on my no-tan. Again, focus on your no-tan. That's going to tell you what your light areas and your dark areas are. Continue painting my blue. Now, notice I moved over quite a bit, as I've got attention on the fact that I'm going to go white, yellow, blue, red, brown, and what appears to be black. It's not black. We're using hooker green and alizarin crimson to get that very far right, dark, rich color. So I'm going to look at this and saying, have I gone far enough over with my yellows? I don't think so. So what I'm going to do is take my brush. I'm going to take some more yellow. And I'm going to extend my yellow further over and have it touch my blue. This is all approximate, and you can still see some of my orange shining through if you notice this. Okay. Now, here's the magic. When I touch this blue, it's going to turn green. Okay, so here we are. Add a little water to my brush. Again, watch the amount of water you have on your brush. You see how that added yellow turned green? That's good. Okay. And I'm going to continue on and do my red and my brown, and the last thing is my hooker green and alizarin crimson. This is an important aspect of this painting. That's getting your background in correctly. And you know, you'll look at this and you'll say, gee, I don't know, I'm not sure. How wide am I supposed to make that white or that yellow or that blue? When you have that feeling in your heart, that little bit of stress, let it go and go all the way over to the opposite color, which is going to be your darkest, deepest color. And don't have to clean our brush, but let's go ahead and get some alizarin crimson and hooker green. Remember, that's how we make our dark color. We don't use black because black is a dulling color. And I'm going to just start here on the very, very end and put in my darkest dark. All the way down. Remember, the foundation of your painting is like, again, I always do this reference, a foundation of a house. You're going to be putting trees on top of this vertical experience. So you want to make sure that you're completely happy with your painting before you add any other layers. So take some time with this. I'm going to move into my brown. So now I've got a little bit of an impression as to how much light color I have and how much dark color, and of course the reds and oranges will be in this center area. So now that you've gotten all your colors in a row, white, yellow, green, blue, red, and the darker colors, the browns and the hooker green, I've gone back in and put a little bit of orange in these next to the red, a little orange over here, just touching up my painting with bits of color. Now this is still wet, it's still damp. I'm going to take my super duper Liquitex Freestyle brush. This is a 4-inch brush that comes to a chiseled edge. Now, a brush from the hardware store will not work because when you wet up a brush, like a big brush, it's going to get fluffy and thick on the end. But if you notice, this has a nice chiseled point. So what I'm going to do while this background is still wet or damp, I'm going to then start on the left side, the light colors, so I don't have to keep cleaning my brush, and I'm going to blend these seams. So here I am blending each seam, and that takes away the harsh transition, the harsh vertical transition from one color to the next, blending in these colors with this brush, and you're going to find that you just fall in love with this brush. Now that your background is completely dry and you have vertical lines of color that are blended at the seams so you don't see a sharp transition, it's time to add the thin trees. I've got some raw sienna on my brush. I'm going to make a combination of raw sienna and hooker green trees, and I'm just going to start and add those thin trees in the background. Nice and thin. Some will go off the page and some will stop short. Some will be come right up from the bottom. Remember, trees are not exactly perfectly straight, and they're certainly not evenly spaced in the forest. So also, here's another tip. Go ahead and make a tree crossover slightly. Now, you don't want too much of that, but that is just an implied version that we're living in a real forest right now. I'm going to go ahead and put some hooker green and alizarin crimson on my brush. Make sure my brush is nice and wet, and I'm going to add in some little darker trees. Now, if you get this globbiness, don't worry, it will dry and it'll look like a nice pretty tree. So here we are putting in some thin trees, and I'll go all the way across the whole breadth of color, light to dark. So the next step is I have hooker green and raw sienna on my brush. All my thin trees are placed in the painting, so now I need some wider trees. You know, some of this is just common sense, right? You're thinking about your visit to the forest. Now look, I had a crooked line. And my hand shook a little bit and I made a crooked line. So just go over that tree and take it off the page. That's solved that problem. So here I am putting now thicker trees in between my thin trees. And I'll continue on until I have, about a quarter as many trees in my painting as I had thin trees. Okay. So now that you've got a nice variety of thin trees, you've got your medium trees, it's time to add your large trees, which are the focus of the painting. So for sake of ease, I've just switched to a larger brush. You can use any size brush that you want to create these large trees. I'm going to go ahead and put one very large tree right here. It's not in the middle. Remember, we don't put our focal point right in the middle of the canvas. There's one. Now you can do 2 or 3 depending on the size of the canvas that you're using. I'm going to go ahead and put another one right here. Notice it's okay if I'm covering over one of my baby trees. I'm creating a composition. And trees are not perfectly straight, so I've got some little wonkiness on this side. That's okay. And this last big tree, I'm going to go ahead and put one more in, but I'm going to make this slightly crooked. I've run out of paint, so get some more paint. Hooker green, raw sienna, and where's my tree? Okay, here it is. I'm going to go from top to bottom, and I'm going to make it slightly on an angle. This tree, most birch trees grow mostly straight, but this one has a little bit of an angle. And again, we're working on adding interest to our painting. So there you have it. We have the completion of the background of our trees. Next, we'll do the layers that go on the top of the trees. So the next thing you want to do is paint a layer of Naples yellow and white over your trees. I'm going to do the large trees so you can easily see this. And that Naples yellow. Wet up my brush a little bit, and I'm painting right over the top of this tree. This is giving me depth. I can see the darkness through the yellow. Not enough paint on my brush, so I'm going to add some more. Naples yellow, a little bit of white. Take it right off the top of the canvas. And of course you're going to do your small trees as well, just slight marks over the tops of those little trees. See how the trees are starting to look three-dimensional. Then take a dry brush and you want to just pull off some of that paint horizontally. See how your tree is taking shape? I'm going to put this brush down and stick with my dry brush. I'm just going to pull, pull, pull in a horizontal fashion. You see how now, oh my gosh, look at that tree forming its shape. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. There we are. Beautiful trees. These are happy trees. I'm going to do that slightly with my little trees as well as my big trees. And of course, as you move along through your painting is going to tell you which trees want to have more yellow, less yellow, more pulling with the dry brush, less pulling. Okay, I'm going to switch to a smaller brush and I'm going to start putting in some horizontal lines randomly on my trees. And you see how that's giving your tree a little more character. Now, how do you make an eye? Just take the hooker green that's on my paintbrush and make a slight little curlicue there. It's got a roundness to it and it's got a little bit of a hook on the top. There. Let me do another one for you so you can see what the eyes are. Maybe right over here. This is nice and light area so you can see clearly. I've got a roundness to this. I'm going to take this one right off the side of the tree and I'm going to make a slight mark above that circle. So here I had a full circle, here I have a half circle and a little bit of a line right above it. Now when that's, I'm going to continue on making my marks in my tree and periodically make eyes. By placing these horizontal lines, you're actually creating more depth to your tree. The center of your tree is becoming rounded. You see that? Okay, now the next thing you want to do is add just a slight white line above your eyes. Let me get some more white. I'm going to use pure white here and just make a dash right over my eye. There we go. Right over my eye. Again, further accentuating the eye. Okay, so now that your trees are in good condition, I'm going to go ahead and add some tree limbs. Tree limbs come off the tree. There's a straight line and then another straight line comes off of that and another straight line. So you can practice making trees. When this branch is going to go this way and then it's going to have another one coming right off the top of that and another one that way. Now that looks a little wonky, so I'm going to go over that. You don't have to be 100% perfect with this because you are going to put a layer of fluffy leaves over it. So what we want to do is get in enough branches so that they look like trees. Oh, that was a little thick, so go a little thinner. And you get the idea. Go across your entire painting. The top layer, you want to go, from here up with a variety of tree branches. I'd say that's about, a little less than a third of the top of your painting. Here we go, and we go all the way across. Because I'm using white branches, you don't see it as much when you get to the lighter side of the canvas. I've added a little Naples yellow to my brush so that when I do my tree branches on the light side of the painting, those little branches will actually show up. Most of my branches on this side of my painting, most of my trees are smaller, so the branches will also be smaller than they were on the left side where I have a lot more larger trees. Now, one important feature of a tree branch is it doesn't always come out of the side of a tree. They come out of the front of the tree. So add a few branches coming out of the front of the tree. Again, this is not photorealism. This is an abstract, expressionist type, vertical painting. So many titles can apply to this painting. So I'm just adding a few more branches, and so it covers the entire canvas. So I've taken some Naples yellow and some white, and I'm going to tap over the top of my young tree limbs with the sea sponge. First I'm going to just tap, tap, tap so I can get an idea of where I want my imaginary or my abstract looking tree leaves to be. And here we are. Okay, so that's a good idea of where I want my tree leaves. I can add more yellow, I can add more white. That is going to be determined when I step away from my canvas and I look at it and I say, do I have enough here? Do I have enough there? That's going to be your creative self coming through in this painting of yours. Your masterpiece is coming along. The good part of doing the top before you do the bottom is you don't have to clean your sponge. And a nice dry sea sponge is going to give you crisp, sharp leaves, where a wet sea sponge would give you some mush or muddiness. So make sure you're using a nice dry sponge. So I've added some hooker green to my sponge, and I'm just going to go ahead and dab. You've probably already figured this out. This is the grass. A little bit of yellow is still left on my sea sponge. I'm okay with that because I'm drawing whatever you do to one side of the canvas you need to do to the other side. So bringing a little bit of the yellow down from the top makes total sense. I'm going to put a little more hooker green. You notice I'm using small amounts of hooker green because you can't take away the paint. So putting on layer after layer until it's exactly perfect is the right approach to this part of your painting. Now, I've got my grass in, nice thin row of hooker green for grass. I'm going to add some red, and yep, you figured it out. The red are little flowers that are growing along the bottom of our tree stumps. And that makes for a beautiful flowered area that the happy trees are growing out of. Okay, do I have enough? Let me take a look. Let me step back, take a look at this and say, you know, I wish I had some bright happy yellow flowers at the bottom. So I'm going to add, now I don't have to clean my sponge because I have a nice big sea sponge that I'm working with. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow, and oh my gosh, that is just perfect. There's some happy flowers. Now, don't take the flowers all the way across this last little bit of yellow flowers. Just do some strategic placement of yellow at the bottom because you don't have the yellow flowers everywhere. This is just going to add a little more interest and movement of your viewer's eye, adding a little more excitement to your composition. And there we have it. I think we're looking very impressionistic. You need to determine where your sun is coming from. And since we're going light to dark, it's obvious that the light is coming from the left side of this canvas. We're going to do a little bit of a detail on our tree, and that's taking some hooker green and alizarin crimson, and we're going to just draw not a completely straight line, but we're going to make a mark where the edge of the tree is. Now, I did one small area of this tree. Now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do another area of the tree. I am highlighting the dark side of the tree. You want to go ahead and do this. Again, do not draw a straight line, even though there might be a tendency or desire to do that. Don't go there. Okay, and now you have some accents for your tree. Again, just making your trees look a little more alive. The next thing we're going to do is put the sun rays in. So I'm going to pick up my dry brush, the one that I use to pull the paint off the big trees, and I'm going to put a little bit of white on it. Again, determining where is my sun coming from, where is my light coming from, and I'm just going to take and make some marks this way to further indicate that the sun is coming from that side, or the light is coming from that side of the room. Now, don't go crazy with this and don't make straight marks, but see how those nice little marks have given you a suggestion. It's giving the viewer a suggestion that there's something there that they don't necessarily see in full realism format. Now it's time to sign your painting. And once you get your painting signed, you'll wait a couple weeks before you varnish it. We talked in the initial setup videos the importance of varnishing your painting. So I've already signed my painting, and I consider the painting signature as much a part of the painting. So now it's time to look at the painting and say, do I need to touch up or brighten up any colors in this composition? I'm looking at this and say, I'm pretty happy with it, but I could add a little more yellow, I could add a little more orange, I can brighten up my blue just slightly. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to start with my yellow, so I don't have to clean my brush. I'm learning to be useful with my time. Okay, so I'm going to add a little yellow here to brighten up this area. I'm going to take a little orange, and I'm going to a little bit too much on my brush. I'm going to wipe that off. That's okay. That happens when we're painting. All right, a little orange there. Little highlights is what I'm doing. I'm going to do a little red. Careful not to do it all in the exact same area. But okay, and if I add just slight amount of blue down here at the very bottom, again, not going in a straight line of adding my accent colors, and I add some blue right here at the very bottom. There we go. Now it's time to let that dry. Your colors will darken overnight. So look at it again in the morning, and I hope you're happy with your painting. Thank you.